What if I told you a simple cotton plant decoration was enough to spark a massive controversy around Serena Williams, exposing hypocrisy, racial tension, and even cracks inside her marriage? Let's break it down. Just a week ago, Serena Williams found herself at a boutique hotel in the heart of New York City, a space that carried all the hallmarks of a polished five-star retreat. The atmosphere was refined, plush furniture carefully curated for elegance, soft lighting casting a golden warmth across marble floors, and the faint murmur of guests enjoying the exclusivity of a place that catered to both luxury and discretion. For someone like Serena, who has spent a lifetime in the spotlight, these spaces are not unfamiliar. Yet, even in environments where everything is designed to dazzle, sometimes the smallest and most unexpected details draw the sharpest attention. That is precisely what happened when her eyes landed on something she hadn't anticipated seeing in such a setting: a cotton plant, carefully displayed as part of the hotel's interior design. On the surface, it might have appeared innocuous, perhaps even artistic. Branches arranged in a vase, soft white blossoms rising like delicate clouds against the backdrop of sleek modern decor. To some, it might have seemed simply rustic or chic, an attempt to bring a touch of nature into an urban luxury space. But for Serena, the sight was jarring. Her reaction was immediate and visceral. Cotton, after all, is not just a plant. For many African Americans, it is a symbol heavy with centuries of historical trauma. Cotton fields were once the backdrop of unimaginable suffering, where enslaved people were forced into grueling labor under conditions that stripped away dignity and life. The plant itself, though innocent by nature, cannot be separated easily from the context of slavery, oppression, and systemic exploitation that shaped its legacy in the United States. Serena's response, then, was not merely about an object on display. It was about everything it represented to her. The juxtaposition was almost surreal: luxury and leisure on one side, and a reminder of pain and exploitation on the other. She did what countless people of her generation instinctively do when confronted with something that stirs their spirit. She documented it. Pulling out her phone, she snapped a photo and shared it with her millions of followers on Instagram, openly admitting that the sight made her uncomfortable and asking others how they felt about it. Her post quickly began to stir conversation. For some fans, her reaction resonated deeply. They, too, saw in that cotton plant not decoration, but history visible, raw and unresolved. Others, however, questioned the response. To them, it was just a design choice, stripped of political or historical intent, and they wondered whether attaching such weight to it was fair. This divergence of perspectives highlights an essential tension in society: the way symbols can mean entirely different things depending on who is looking. Yet, Serena's decision to share her feelings reflects something larger about her as a public figure. Throughout her career, she has not only been a champion on the court but also a cultural voice, unafraid of speaking up, even when her perspective draws scrutiny. In this instance, her discomfort revealed how even in spaces of luxury, traces of history can intrude and demand to be acknowledged. It was not about cotton as a commodity or a decorative choice. It was about memory, identity, and the lingering shadows of the past. And so, what began as an ordinary evening in a boutique hotel became something far more symbolic. It became a reminder that objects are never truly neutral. They carry stories, and those stories can spark emotions, sometimes pride, sometimes joy, and at other times, discomfort that forces us to reckon with how the past continues to shape the present. For Serena, the cotton plant was not simply part of the decor. It was a mirror, reflecting back a history that refuses to be ignored, even in the most carefully curated luxury spaces.
All right, everyone, how do we feel about cotton as decoration? Personally, for me, it doesn't feel great. So actually, it feels like nail polish made for cotton, natural.
When Serena Williams first reacted to the cotton plant at that New York hotel, she chose not to keep her feelings private. Instead, she shared them publicly with her millions of followers on Instagram, inviting her fans into the moment. She admitted openly that the display made her feel uncomfortable and asked others what they thought. It wasn't simply about decor. To her, the cotton plant carried the weight of history, a reminder of the brutal legacy of slavery in America. For Serena, who has spent much of her career breaking barriers as a Black woman in spaces that weren't always welcoming, this symbol struck a personal chord. But her reaction, rather than being met with quiet empathy, set off a storm online. Critics were quick to highlight her immense privilege. Serena, after all, isn't just a celebrated athlete, she's the most decorated female tennis player in history. Fluent in several languages, married to Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian, and one of the wealthiest athletes alive, with a net worth reportedly approaching $400 million. To some, this status undermined her discomfort. They argued that someone who had achieved so much, who lived a life far removed from the hardships of cotton fields and systemic poverty, had little ground to take offense at a symbolic object. In their view, her reaction wasn't a genuine reflection of lived struggle but rather an exaggerated response, perhaps even a form of virtue signaling, using outrage to appear aligned with social causes without addressing deeper, tangible issues. The backlash didn't stop there. Internet sleuths quickly resurfaced an older photo posted by Ohanian himself. The image showed their young daughter standing near a piece of artwork displayed inside their home, a sculpture that prominently featured cotton. This revelation poured gasoline on an already fiery debate. To many critics, it looked hypocritical. How could Serena condemn a cotton plant in a hotel lobby while simultaneously living with cotton-themed art under her own roof? Context, of course, complicates the comparison. The cotton in her home wasn't raw plant matter placed in a vase. It was part of a commissioned piece of art, created by an established artist, meant to provoke reflection. Yet, for critics, the distinction rang hollow. Cotton, they argued, is cotton, whether it appears in a hotel lobby, a museum, or a private home. It cannot be separated from its history. To them, the entire controversy seemed overblown, another example of celebrities making mountains out of symbolic molehills, while avoiding conversations about pressing issues like education, healthcare disparities, or systemic injustice that affect the Black community more directly. As the noise grew louder, Alexis Ohanian stepped in to defend his wife. He argued that the sculpture carried symbolic meaning and therefore should not be equated with a decorative cotton display. The art, he explained, was intentional, layered with interpretation, and different from raw stocks that could evoke the haunting imagery of slavery in the South. He insisted that the context mattered, that Serena's discomfort was not hypocrisy, but rather a natural human reaction to symbols that shift depending on setting and meaning. Still, not everyone was convinced. For detractors, this defense seemed like splitting hairs. Cotton, after all, is inescapably tied to a painful legacy, and many felt the distinction between artistic cotton and decorative cotton was a stretch. To them, the entire controversy was a case study in overreaction and contradiction. This was not the first time Ohanian had leaped to Serena's side when she faced criticism. In fact, he has a history of doing so, particularly when issues of race, symbolism, or cultural perception come into play. Some see this as an admirable reflection of his devotion as a partner, proof that he stands unwaveringly by her side in the face of public scrutiny. Others, however, interpret it as overcompensation, a response shaped by deeper tensions, whether personal, cultural, or even familial. And this raises a more intriguing question. Why does Ohanian always feel compelled to step into these conversations on her behalf? Is it purely love and loyalty, the instinct to shield the person he cares about from attack? Or is there more at play, perhaps, a sense of obligation born out of awareness that his own privilege as a white man affords him a voice that is sometimes heard differently than hers? Whatever the reason, his presence in these debates adds another dimension to Serena's story, one where personal relationships, cultural expectations, and public perception intersect in ways that are often messy, complicated, and far from black and white. What began with a simple cotton plant in a hotel lobby, then became something much bigger, a reflection of the different ways people perceive symbols, the expectations placed on public figures, and the complex dynamics within an interracial marriage lived in the public eye. For Serena and Alexis, it was never just about decor, it was about history, identity, perception, and the unrelenting gaze of a world ready to judge at every turn.
A billionaire. So Serena Williams opens up about the painful truth behind her marriage. His family has never accepted me. Like, who gives? Because of my skin color. You marry wealthy, affluent men, and then you expect to just be welcome? Out of all the money they made off our ancestors, you just gonna come have a baby and take it back? I just cannot even believe that this is a conversation. You're in America. This is how shit goes. This is the dynamic of being in Europe. Affluent families don't give a damn who you are. If you do not look like them, you are an outsider coming to take what they built. And they're trying to figure out what the seeing you and why he don't see nothing in a nice little pretty little white girl. What is the problem? You got one job, Serena.
Tasha K raised a point that adds another layer to Serena Williams' story. According to her, Alexis Ohanian's family has never fully accepted Serena because of her race. If that's true, it casts his constant public defense of her in a new light. For years, many have wondered why Ohanian is so quick to step in whenever Serena faces criticism. Perhaps it isn't just about protecting his wife. It may also be about proving his devotion in the face of family disapproval. That kind of dynamic can weigh heavily on a marriage. If Serena senses rejection from his family, no amount of wealth or fame can erase the insecurity it creates. And Ohanian, in turn, may feel the need to prove his loyalty twice over, constantly affirming his love in ways that play out publicly. For Serena, this tension could explain moments where she seems caught between two worlds, adjusting her image in ways that might appeal to his family while simultaneously trying to maintain her identity within the Black community. This tug-of-war can leave anyone feeling conflicted. On one side, there's the desire for validation and belonging from her husband's world. On the other, there's the pressure to show cultural pride and stay connected to her roots. The result, critics argue, is that some of her gestures, like highlighting the cotton plant incident, come across as performative rather than authentic. And he ends up carrying the weight of her choices too. Every time Serena faces backlash, he is expected to jump in, defend her, and, in some ways, interpret her actions for the public. To some, this makes him look like a devoted partner, a man who refuses to let the woman he loves face the harshness of the internet alone. But love, even the strongest kind, can bend under that sort of unrelenting pressure. To constantly step into the crossfire of public opinion, to fight battles that aren't fully his own but become his by marriage, is a heavy task. It doesn't just test the patience of a husband, it tests the durability of the bond itself. The truth is that interracial relationships often carry layers of complexity that those outside of them rarely understand. They are not just unions between two individuals, but intersections of culture, family history, social perception, and unspoken biases. When a Black woman marries a white man of Ohanian's stature, every interaction, whether at the dinner table, in the media, or on social platforms, is filtered through the lens of race and privilege. Even casual decisions or simple comments can be magnified into statements about identity, loyalty, or authenticity. And when one partner lives under the microscope of global fame, as Serena does, these dynamics only intensify. I once spoke to a friend who had experienced some of these dynamics firsthand. He had married a white woman while living in Poland, a country where racial diversity was limited and cultural expectations were starkly different. He told me that their love was genuine and their bond sincere. But no amount of affection could erase the invisible weight they carried each day. His wife, after taking his Nigerian surname, found herself struggling in her career, doors quietly closing because of the biases hidden beneath polite smiles. Their children, though loved deeply at home, faced cruel teasing in school. They were taunted, questioned, and sometimes isolated because they didn't fit neatly into the boxes that Polish society had drawn for them. The marriage eventually fractured not because of a lack of commitment or care, but because the constant negotiation of identity, perception, and belonging became too much to bear. For him, the lesson was sobering. Love can survive many storms, but the combined weight of prejudice, cultural misunderstanding, and societal rejection can sometimes crush even the strongest foundations. Serena and Alexis, of course, are not living in Poland. They are one of the most visible interracial couples in the world, navigating a space shaped by celebrity privilege and vast wealth. Yet the essence of that lesson still applies. Every time Serena expresses discomfort about something racially symbolic, Alexis is thrust into a role that few husbands have to consider: the public defender. He has to reassure her privately as a husband, while also justifying her perspective publicly as a partner in the spotlight. This dual responsibility creates a burden that outsiders often underestimate. Consider, too, the particular kind of scrutiny Serena faces. As a Black woman, every choice she makes is filtered, not only through the lens of celebrity but also through the societal expectations placed upon Black women. They are expected to be resilient yet approachable, powerful yet humble, outspoken yet graceful. Any perceived misstep, whether it's an emotional outburst on the tennis court or discomfort at a cotton display in a hotel, becomes magnified and weaponized. When she falters, critics are quick to pounce, pointing to her privilege as proof that she shouldn't complain, while simultaneously dismissing the cultural and emotional context of her reactions. For Alexis, stepping into this environment requires him to constantly walk a tightrope. He must balance empathy with explanation, standing firmly beside his wife without appearing to dismiss the very real experiences of those who disagree with her. And though his intentions may be noble, there is an unspoken truth. The very fact that he has to explain her to the public speaks to a deeper problem. Why should Serena's feelings need validation through her white husband's interpretation? Why is his voice, in moments of controversy, often received with more authority than hers? This question points to a broader societal issue. Interracial couples often face the expectation to act as living symbols of unity or cultural progress, but that symbolism comes at a cost. The private complexities of their relationship are overshadowed by the public's projection of what they should represent. If Serena expresses her discomfort, it is not seen simply as her individual response. It becomes, in the eyes of critics, a statement about the legitimacy of interracial love, about whether wealth and success can shield someone from the wounds of racial history. The cotton plant incident illustrates this perfectly. For Serena, it was a moment of personal discomfort tied to cultural memory. For critics, it became a referendum on her authenticity, her gratitude, her privilege, and even her marriage. And for Alexis, it became another battlefield where he was expected to defend not just her feelings but their very union. This dynamic is exhausting because it places both partners in roles they never asked for. Serena as a symbol of racial contradiction, Alexis as her perpetual interpreter, and in that cycle, the actual human experience, the quiet insecurities, the tender reassurances, the private struggles is often lost. Even immense success and wealth cannot shield them from these burdens. Serena's $400 million fortune, her 23 Grand Slam titles, her status as a global icon, none of it insulates her from the sting of racial undertones or the pressure of constantly needing to prove her authenticity to both communities. In fact, her success amplifies the scrutiny. For some, her wealth disqualifies her from speaking about racial discomfort. For others, her marriage complicates her position as a cultural representative. And Alexis, despite his privilege and resources, is still pulled into the fray as the proof of her intentions. In the end, what Serena and Alexis face is a paradox. Their marriage is deeply personal, rooted in love and commitment, yet it is also profoundly public, symbolizing to many the possibilities and tensions of interracial relationships. Every moment of controversy forces them to perform the relationship not only for each other but for the world, and that performance, constant, exhausting, and scrutinized, creates its own weight, heavier than any cotton plant could ever symbolize. The core issue, then, is not whether Serena overreacted to a piece of decor or whether Alexis defended her convincingly. The real issue is the relentless pressure interracial couples face to justify themselves, to navigate insecurities magnified by cultural expectations, and to carry burdens that most couples will never encounter. Love may be strong, but it is not always enough to erase centuries of history, nor can it always silence the voices of critics who insist on turning private feelings into public debates. For Serena and Alexis, this is the paradox they must live with. Extraordinary love under extraordinary pressure, where every reaction is magnified, every defense dissected, and every gesture scrutinized as if it were symbolic of something far larger than the two of them. It is a reminder that even in a world of immense privilege, success, and wealth, the shadows of history and the gaze of society still loom large, and no marriage, no matter how strong, is ever fully free from their weight.